tonight we have the privilege of bringing up one of our very own members here at Pulse. No, it's not Tim. It is Key.
What's going on, guys? Talk amongst yourselves. Let's get myself prepared here. Come on. I am not this short, so it's easy. Nope, I'm not playing that. I'm not playing the dark game tonight.
I gotta tighten it. Oh,
John did it already.
yeah. Kind of.
Wait, did you?
No,
Yeah, I think you're okay.
We got it again.
Yeah.
John,
someone.
There's no stand behind you.
It's gonna make it more dramatic.
No, not yet.
There it is. Yeah, I won't touch it. I'll still get it. All right. Anyways, good evening, everybody. Thank you guys for letting me come up and speak again. We're going through this series right now where we're going over the heroes of faith in the Old Testament. What? Hello? Oh, really? It's fine. It's fine. It's not technical difficulties. Don't worry about it. All right. So we're going on this series right now about heroes of the Old Testament and heroes of faith who needed God to do something that was beyond them, something they couldn't do with their own strength and with their own powers. But before I dig into the character that I am exploring tonight, I want to ask you guys about some characters that we are very familiar with. At least I believe some of us are very familiar with. The Avengers. May 1st, Age of Ultron. I know you're all bought the ticket already. Like it's on. And I'm not even going to open this up for debate. I had it like written here, like who is the greatest Avenger out of all of these people? It's Captain America because America. But I'm not gonna lie. We will be here literally all night if we get to talk about this. So I'm sorry, we're not going to get to talk about this tonight. But the greatest Avenger is not actually on this picture. It is not here listed, unfortunately. This is a bit after his time. The greatest Avenger, or should I say, the greatest Revenger, is Samson. And Samson from Judges in the Bible is one of the coolest characters in the Bible. He is a real-life Superman. He was the OG superhero, right? He was blessed with super strength on a quest from God, and he got his calling in life and his superpowers before he was even born. Like, God had this all planned out for him. So we start our story in Judges 13. So let me just set the stage for you guys, all right? Let me set the stage. So Israel is in a place right now where they are walking away from God. They've lifted up other idols. The God that delivered them, the God that honors them and who chose them as his people, they've thrown it the wayside. And it's a tough time in Israel because God has seen this and is allowing them to be controlled by the Philistines. They are now under their jurisdiction, and this reign is going to reign for 40 years. God is so good that he's not going to just let them be overtaken and overshadowed for so long. He provides provision, a way for them to come out of this. So, in Judges 13, we're introduced to a man named Manoah, who's from the Danite clan, and his wife. And his wife is barren, she can't have children. And an angel comes to Manoah's wife and tells her that she's pregnant, despite the fact that she's actually been barren for years. So, go to the next slide. So, the angel comes to the wife of Manoah and says, "You will become pregnant and have a son, and his head is never to be touched by a razor because the boy is to be a Nazarene, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." Now this is pretty crazy. This is like, we've been under, rule of these other people for 40 years. This is big news, especially because she also can't get pregnant. So it's kind of like, what are you even talking about right now, Mr. Angel? But the thing that I really want to examine in this is because the boy is to be a Nazarene. And what does that mean? So the Nazarite vow, and the Nazarite oath, is something that people would do in Old Testament times that was a dedication of their lives to God. And they wouldn't do it for their entire lives. It would be for a couple of years Number 2, no razor may be used on their head. They cannot cut their hair. And number 3, they must not go near a dead body. If a dead body falls into them, they have to run away. They can't touch it. It's not like no dead bodies. Family member drops dead, even says, if a family member drops dead, walk away. Walk away. It's not your problem. All right? You devoted yourself to God, and the point of a Nazirite vow or a Nazirite oath is to cleanse yourself and dedicate yourself to the Lord. And at the end of it, there would be a sacrifice, and you would sacrifice food and grain, and you cut off your hair, and you burn your hair, and then you'd be made clean again. That's how you atone for your sins. So some people would do this for a certain amount of time, a few years. But Samson was supposed to be a Nazirite for life. His entire life, he was not allowed to do any of these things. So I was thinking like, okay, what would this guy look like in that time? So if you can go forward like 2 slides, Caitlin. For those of you who watch Game of Thrones, this is Khal Drogo, and he has a ponytail down to here. That is his butt. This is his name. Alright, like this is like his whole thing is like I can't cut my hair. I don't cut my hair when I lose a battle, and I never lose battles. And so like that was like that's like when I see Samson, I'm like, yeah, he probably just had like super long braid down his back, like I'm the best. You can't touch my hair because it's too pretty. I'm sorry. And so with this determination or with this dedication to God, you see Samson start to grow up through the book of Judges, where he has his mission placed on his heart that he is going to take the lead of bringing Israel out of the control of the Philistines. And that's a huge responsibility. Like, oh, we've been under tyrannical rule for 40 years, but I'm going to solve it. God told me so. It's fine. He sent a guy down here to tell me, so it's cool. I'm going to do it. I got this. And we see that over those years, Samson, he knows his destiny. He embraces that. He knows that it is his job to use his gift and his blessing from God to deliver the people of Israel. And it starts to make him prideful, and that starts to take root in his heart. And you start to see that. We're going to unpack some of these scenes where that starts to play out. But just to put that into context, pride is one thing that the Bible very clearly talks about. And it very clearly talks about it not being a good thing. So in Proverbs 16, it says, "The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished." That's a little foreboding because all of Samson's story is about him being prideful. Most of it is about him being prideful. And what we're gonna unpack is what led Samson to this place. And before we talk about that, I just want to talk about how bad pride is. I mean, it's easy to read on the screen like, oh yeah, pride's bad, they're going to go punished. But I think pride is one of the most dangerous things for anybody in any walk of life, whether they're a Christian, whether they're not. No matter what religion they follow, most world religions talk about pride being a horrible thing. And it's a personal issue that I've actually dealt with many, many times. I'm not like, in high school, I was not very cool. If you guys want to wrap your head around that, it's like I didn't have a lot of friends. And then when I came here, I kind of got to reinvent myself, and nobody knew who I was. And so it was kind of cool, right? I didn't have to be like that really lonely guy anymore. All of a sudden, I got to have a new start. And as I started to, make more friends, I was like a popular kid now. Like, what is that? Like, I have more than 50 friends on Facebook. I'm so cool. Like, that's a dangerous path to walk down because pride is a lie that we hide behind to tell ourselves that we're better than we actually are. For the longest time, I think that I hid behind that lie. And the thing about pride is that you can trick yourself and you start to do mental backflips. Or I don't know, I have an inner monologue in my head. I don't know about you guys. I talk to myself all the time about this, and I'm like, I'm awesome. Yes, I am awesome. Let's do this. And you can convince yourself to do really dumb things when you get to it. So what I want to really drill into that before we continue forward is pride is the trap that tells us we are the cause of our own good fortune. And I want you to hold on to that as we go forward into the story. Pride is a trap that tells us that we are the cause of our own good fortune. So continuing on the story of Samson, Samson's grown up and he's looking for a wife now. So God puts a message on his heart to go to the town of Timnah, and find a wife there. Now that area is controlled by the Philistines, so it's like marrying out of your religion, marrying out of your culture. So that in itself was kind of a shocker to his parents. And he was like, yeah, well, we're gonna go down to that other village, because there are no real women interested in here. And his parents were like, are you sure? Are you sure that you can't just marry a nice Christian girl here? He's like, no, I gotta go down to the village. That's where all the fun is. Let's go. So on his way down there, he was sent down there by God because he wanted to serve as a wake-up call to the Philistines, that God had not forsaken the people of Israel. He put that message on Samson's heart, telling him, you're going to go to this village that's controlled by your enemies, and you're going to take a wife. Because this is my wake-up call. This is my calling card. I'm going to tell those people that I'm still here, and I'm still the one in charge. So on the road to Timnah, Samson's confronted by a lion. And Scripture says that the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. Okay, wait. Lion jumps into your path, like, no problem, I got this. Rip it in two, not a problem. If you need a different example, it'd be like if Tim Castagna wanted to fight me, and he came up, just be like, boom, one and done, on the floor. Sorry, you're still getting over your whole back thing. You wouldn't stand a chance. So, that all to say that God has these huge plans for Samson. And it's in this time of need, God always provides. A lion jumps in your path, God's got you. Super strength. Let's do this. He just rips open the lion. And God's going to continue to do that over and over again throughout the rest of Samson's story. So we continue in Judges 14. Says, sometime later, when he went back to marry her, the wife he found in Timnah, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass, and in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. It's weird. Why are bees making honey in a dead lion? I don't know. Let's continue on. So then, he scooped out the honey with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some too, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken it from the lion's carcass. Okay, wait, what? First of all, you just broke the Nazarite vow. Alright? Oh, there it goes. Got it. Alright. He just broke his Nazarite vow. You definitely touched a dead thing. You reached inside of a lion and scooped out honey. Which also, like, I mean, maybe he was tired from ripping the lion in half and it was a long walk or something. Like, you really, like, you didn't pack a Cliff Bar for your long walk. Like, you that hungry that you're like, oh man, that dead lion honey looks great right now. We're just gonna scoop him up. You know who would love this? My parents. So hard. Stuff's in his bag. Like, what? Samson, you were absolutely insane. What are you doing right now? And what he's doing right now is he's allowing the past favor of God to influence his decisions. Knowing that God has provided for him in the past, God is going to continue to provide for him in the future. Rather than thinking about the consequences of the moment, he chooses to trust in what God told him in the very beginning, that I'm going to save all of Israel. I'm going to lead them out of slavery. I'm going to lead them out of being enslaved. I'm the one who's going to do this. So if I break a vow, like I touched a dead lion, oh well, God's going to provide. He's going to do it because he always has. And he doesn't care about bending all these rules because he's been there. He's like, oh, no, that's fine. Every time that I need God to come through big, he's going to come through big. And so pride begins to swell in Samson as he goes down to Timnah and finds his wife. A celebration goes on, a huge party comes down, and the town of Timnah chooses 30 people as his companions for like his wedding party, which, I mean, that's insane also to have 30 groomsmen at your wedding who throw you a party, but that's cool. If that's how they do it, you know, party on, let's do it. I'm pretty sure that there was alcohol at that party, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't explicitly say, so I'm not going to judge Samson on that one. But, like, really just partying with the enemy, oh, that's fine, I'm just going to throw down a party, and we're just going to get drunk and have fun. It's not a big deal. And he starts to get really prideful this time, because, I mean, he did just rip a lion in half, so I guess he's kind of cool. And he starts to even get so prideful about that he calls them out, and he makes a bet with his 30 companions. And he tells them, if you can solve my riddle, I will give you all new clothes and garments, all 30 of you. But if you can't solve it, then all of you have to buy me new clothes and new garments. And they're like, well, I mean, not the brightest guy in the world. He just going around like into enemy territory, marrying people that he shouldn't be with. So sure, yeah, we'll take this bet. And he says the riddle is: out of the eater, something to eat; out of the strong, something sweet. He uses the thing that he broke his vow in the riddle. Like, oh, let me just expose to the whole world that I decided, oh yeah, it's fine, I broke my vow, but you'll never figure it out. I'm so confident in myself that you'll never figure it out. His pride is on display for everyone to see. And now he's provoked the Philistines because he's threatening to make them look like a bunch of idiots. He goes out of their territory, is taking one of their own, and he's insulting them by saying, you're not as intelligent as me because you can't figure out my riddle. So now you're all going to have to pay me. So the Philistines, being really smart and not wanting to, fail this, they struggled with it for 3 days. 30 dudes in a room for 3 days being like, I have no idea. What is he talking about? Eater, sweet, what is this guy talking about? And they're like, you know what? I bet his future wife, I bet she'll know what the riddle is. So they go to her and they're like, hey, we were all friends. You owe me one from that one time that I did the thing for you. Remember? Can you figure out what this riddle means? And her loyalty is still with her people at that time. And she turns to Samson, she begs him to reveal the secret. And he's kind of like, oh, I didn't even tell my parents yet. I don't know if I should tell you. But eventually she's like, if you really love me, tell me. My girlfriend's on the room, but she'll see this. I've used that on her so many times, and I apologize. That is the argument closer right there. Like, that is the point where, okay, we are no longer arguing in a good place. This is no longer a nice discussion. This is, I want it, you're going to give it to me, because I want your drink. Like, oh, if you really love me, you would just tell me what the riddle meant. He's like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And so he tells her, and she relays the information directly back to her countrymen. So, you go to the next slide, Judges 14. Before sunset on the 7th day, the end of the bet, the men of the town said to Samson, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? So Samson says to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. Yeah, I don't know what that language is. He's talking about his wife. You know, had not plowed with my heifer? It's like, if you hadn't, farmed the field with my cow. That's literally what that means, but okay, if you hadn't messed with my wife, then you wouldn't have known that riddle. So, I don't know about that language, it's a little weird, but anyways, Samson is furious right now. He's like, I can't believe my wife just gave up the riddle that easily. I had no idea that she would do that. I didn't know why she was asking so much. So, he's infuriated, and he goes down to the town of, I know it's wrong, but Ashkelon. And the Spirit of God descends on him again, and he sees a bunch of guys walking around town, and he slaughters 30 men and takes their clothes. Not joking here. This is, you can read about it in Judges 14. He goes and he slaughters 30 guys, goes to their homes, takes their stuff, and he goes back. And he is so angry at this point. Can't believe I lost a bet. I had to come down here. I had to kill 30 people for all this stuff. I can't pay for it. I didn't think I would lose. And so his pride is his ego is so big at this point, he's not even willing to admit that he was wrong, that he was in the wrong with this mistake. He shouldn't have made this bet. He's not even willing to go to his family and say, I made a stupid bet, I need you to bail me out. No, he just goes and kills 30 innocent random people because, why not? Because they have clothes, they're not going to do something like that. So I'll just take them. So now, his pride has not only caused him to break his vow and commit murder, but the passage goes on to say that when he gets back to Timnah, his wife has been taken by one of his companions, one of the guys that he made the bet with. So now he's lost his wife. He allowed arrogance to set root in his heart, and he lost what was dear to him because of it. See, we have a choice on how we respond to problems in our lives, and when we respond with arrogance and pride, we only harm ourselves. Samson was too high in the sky to admit that he was in the wrong. He was too arrogant to admit that he had made a mistake, and he didn't want to come clean. He didn't want to prove and show to people that he was weak, that he had lost the bet. And because of that, he acted out in rage and in arrogance. And that caused him to lose everything that he cared about. He loses his wife, the person that God told him to go and marry. And he had the choice on how to respond. He could have just not made that in the first place. Or he could have owned up to it and said, I don't have enough to pay you right now, I'll work it off. Or I'll go to my parents and I'll get the clothes for it. Sure, he gets dirty, like clothes in his back closet that he gave away or something. He could have done something to pay back that debt, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to show everyone that he was weak. So he ended up losing what was close to him. And that, if we really think about that for a minute, that's kind of how we can be. I know I've been really stubborn sometimes with decisions. When you start to make a bad decision, you start to go down the wrong path. Maybe you start to skip classes. Rather than going to counseling or going to tutoring and getting help, I think I can do this. I know I can pull this out. I know I've got bad grade on that midterm, but I know I can pull this one out. I just have to ace the next one. Or maybe you even resort to cheating. Maybe you even resort to cheating on the next test and you get caught. And then you fail the class. We have a choice on how we respond to these things. And if we don't own up to our mistakes, then we're only going to harm ourselves in the end. So, this is the hype moment. This is the moment that everyone has been waiting for. This is when Samson, the Avenger, is born. This is like when he gets his super suit. He goes on the war path. Samson's wife has been given away, and Samson just decides, all right, all-out warfare with the Philistines. He catches 300 foxes, which I don't even know how long that will take you to catch. I don't think I've ever been able to run next to a fox, like even a squirrel on campus. But like, he caught 300 foxes somehow. No steel traps, just bare hands. Like, all right, let's do this. He ties their tails together in pairs of two, and he lights a torch on the end of it, and then lets them run into the fields of grain. And just lights it on fire. And it's like, oh, you have crops? Not anymore. And just starts lighting everything on fire. And so, I mean, first of all, what kind of maniac is like, I know the best way to do this. I got it. I'm going to catch foxes, light them on fire. Firefox, that's where they come from. I knew they stole it. I knew they did. They stole it from Samson, Firefox. So he sets them loose in the fields. They burned down the storehouses, they burned down the fields, they burned down the vineyards, and basically anything Samson could get his hands on, he just broke it and burnt it and destroyed it. And I mean, that is like an adult temper tantrum. Like, you took my wife away, I'm going to take away all your food, and just lights it all on fire. So in retaliation, they do an eye for an eye, and they're searching for Samson, and they're like, why did he do this? And they find out from someone in the town, oh, well, his wife was given away to one of his wives. So we're like, great, we'll just burn down her house and her father. So they burn her father and Samson's wife alive. And Samson, at this point, he just is losing it. Like, he was angry before, but now he has no chance of getting his wife back. He has no chance of getting back to where he wanted to be with his life, and no chance of getting back on track. So he curses them all out, and he's like, I'm going to get vengeance on you all. You guys all have it coming. I'm going to go now. Have a great day. And then walks away and goes and hides in a cave because he's afraid of fighting at that moment. There's too many of them. He's got to back up. So the Philistines are on the hunt now, and they're ready to find him. They're out. They march on Judah, and they begin asking about Samson. They're going around the houses, knocking on doors. Have you seen this guy? We're looking for him. Wanted posters, the whole bit, right? Now, they get to Judah, and they are like, yeah, we saw him. We will go get him for you, because he'll just lash out and kill you guys. But he won't kill us, because we're countrymen. They're like, all right, they agree. And so 3,000 people from Judah, they know where he's hiding. They go out, and they ask him, Samson, you've got to surrender yourself over to the Philistines. It's not cool. You burned down all of the food of this entire region. And he's like, all right, I'll do it on one condition. Don't kill me right now. Tie me up and give me over to them so I can face justice. And they're like, okay, that's fair. So they do it. They tie him up, and they hand him over to the Philistines. They're like, all right, we got him, we can do justice. But the Spirit of the Lord descends on him again, and he breaks free of his bonds, grabs the jawbone of a donkey, and just goes on the murder spree. And he kills 1,000 people with the jawbone of a donkey. Can we talk about this for a second? Like, first of all, was he just like walking down? He's like, oh sweet, that bone, that's my escape plan. He's just like, he's think that he's coming up on the scene, he's like, yep, just went on the murder spree, killed 1,000 people, got all of the murder out, we're good, I feel better now, I'm gonna lead you guys, I'm a politician. It's good. Politicians did that today, like, well, Hillary Clinton, you got great credentials here, but when's the last time you killed a man? I can't recall that in my memory, so I don't think you're suited for candidacy. Like, these guys, it was like the Hunger Games is how we got our politicians. Like, threw Obama and Romney in a pit, and it's like, all right, go out, guys. See who comes out. Like, that's essentially what happens. And by now, Samson is so far over the hill. I mean, he's beyond prideful, and he's sinned, he's done so much wrong. He's endangered his own people just by being Samson and doing stupid things. He's burned down all these crops, he's endangered other people's lives because of this, and he's broken his vows of not touching dead things. He touched quite a few dead things in that fight. Yeah, 1,000 of them. So he's already done all this bad, but God's still providing for Samson. Because at the end of this, he kills 1,000 guys, and he screams to God, essentially, God, I'm thirsty. You're going to let me die in this desert now because I forgot to pack water? And God makes a spring, and he drinks from it. He's like, thanks, God. I was thirsty. It's like, wait, hold on. You killed 1,000 people, and you're like, the super strength wasn't enough. Now I'm tired. Please. And God provides for them too. But you see, that's because God is not in the business of condemning you for your actions. God is a refiner, and God can take your pain and turn it into a victory. Now, it's not as clear-cut as Samson's like, oh, my pain of being a jerk and having to be hungry because I burned out all the crops. But he's taking these actions and he's preparing Samson for something greater. Because this seems like this is it. God delivered on his promise. 20 years of Samson ruling over these people. It seems like God has fulfilled that. I mean, they can't stop Samson anymore. No one's trying to anymore because they're too terrified. Well, he just killed all of us, so no, we're not going to go and say, oh, you guys can't do that, you're breaking the law. Samson's just going to tear us down again. They're terrified of opposing him. And for a good measure. But God doesn't let his story stop there. He doesn't just get away with murdering all these people and disobeying him. But keep in mind, in the beginning, God said that he's going to lead the people of Israel out of this bondage. He didn't say that he was going to be he didn't say he was going to kill all of the Philistines and that's how he was going to get out. He didn't say exactly how Samson was going to do it. It wasn't just, oh, you're going to be so big and mighty that people are going to fear you. And then you guys will be free. Because they weren't free. They were still under the rule of the Philistines. The Philistines just weren't messing with them for 20 years. So Samson starts to lead for 20 years like a great politician, apparently. Don't really have a lot of information about it. But what you find out is that old habits die hard. And Samson one day is walking by Gaza, and he sees a prostitute. He's like, wow, she's pretty beautiful. I'm thinking I'm going to spend the night here. 20 years, clean, nothing happens. And this decides like, that prostitute, that's the one, we're doing. Goes into Gaza, sleeps with her, and of course, the people find out about this. The people of Gaza are like, wait, Samson is in that house right now? He's here? And they surround the house. And they're so ready for this. And why Samson made this decision, I'm not exactly sure. Perhaps it was from the pain of losing his wife. Maybe he was craving companionship. Once again, Samson finds himself in a place that he shouldn't be. The people of Gaza are waiting for him, and they don't want to find him in the middle of the day because it's too obvious. Waiting for the night to fall so they can storm the house in the morning and take him out. So Samson sleeps halfway through the night, knows what's up, and is like, I'm ahead of this. And he sneaks out of the brothel or wherever he was staying, and he makes his way to the city gates, but they've been barred. And he's probably thinking, like, oh man, they shut the gates for the night, they planned for this, like, oh, I'm so trapped, what do I do? No, Samson doesn't think of that. Samson is Samson. Samson's like, only I know how to break out of this. He picks up the entire gate and carries it out of the city. Carries it up the hill, overlooking the city, and just drops it there. So I got a picture for you guys. He just picks it up He just picks up their front door and walks out with it. Now, how shameful must the people of Gaza feel right now? Like, they have their biggest enemy, the biggest perpetrator, like, on lockdown. All they had to do was storm the house and take him out. And he just walks out and picks up your door and then leaves. And then leaves it on the top of a mountain to taunt them, like, hey, I took your gate, here it is, have fun with that. And then walks away and just leaves. I mean, they have it, and now they don't have a front door. And this is a really dangerous place for Samson to be in, because he's gotten a taste of that pride again. He's gotten a taste of what it's like to be back on the battlefield, the glory days of I can do anything I want and nobody can stop me. There's no consequences, because no one's going to take me down. So he starts looking for trouble. And that's where it leads him to a place called the Valley of Sorrow. And there he meets a woman named Delilah and falls in love with her. It's not like the Plain White Tea song. There's a lot of, no, wrong Delilah. But she is approached by the Philistine rulers, and they talk about taking Samson down from the other side. They're going to pay her an astronomical price, thousands of shekels of silver per Philistine ruler. And there's hundreds of thousands of them. I mean, they are ready to pay her through the nose if they can just stop this guy. His reign of terror has gone on for too long. So her allegiance, being with the Philistines, she accepts it. And they say, the only way we're going to stop Samson is if we learn what gives him super strength. We can't beat him in a fight. We've sent all of our people out, they all died. So how are we going to stop him? We're going to find out what makes him strong, and we're going to cut off the source. So she asks him exactly this, which, okay, first of all, Samson, what kind of question is like, where does your super strength come from, and how can I subdue you? Literally what she asks. Is that not suspicious at all? Like, how can I stop you from killing people and cut off your super strength? Oh, yeah, let me tell you. It's a great story. And so he tells her, his first response, 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried. If you tie them up around my arms, my strength will leave me and I'll be like any other man. And then that night, he gets tied up with 7 fresh bowstrings that haven't been dried. And Delilah yells to him, like, oh, the Philistines, they're upon you, you're being attacked. And he jumps out of bed and rips them off and is like, where are they? Where are they? And they're nowhere to be found. And she's like, wait, why did you lie to me about that? He's like, what? Oh, no, what? How this happen? Completely just doesn't recognize with him that he told his wife something and that had happened that night. So she asks him again, no, really tell me this time. That one didn't work. He's like, all right. If you get new ropes that have never been used and you tie me up with them, I'll be as weak as any other man. And she's like, oh, okay. They go to bed. He gets tied up with brand new ropes, and in the morning, when it's like, the Philistines are here, they're attacking me, he breaks out with me. He's like, what's up? And it's like, no, you still broke out. And she's like, okay, now you're just making me look like a fool. Because I keep asking this question, and he keeps just breaking out of it. But really, Samson is the fool here. I mean, if you've been asked multiple nights in a row, what causes you to lose your super strength, and then it keeps happening, perhaps your wife is betraying you. Pro tip, guys. Pro tip. Alright? So, obviously he's lying at this point because he doesn't want to lose his super strength and doesn't want to be captured. So, she asks him again, and he says, alright, if you weave my 7 braids into the loom and pin it there, I will become weak. And obviously he's lying again, but she does it again. And he breaks out of it the next day and rips apart his bed because he breaks out of it with his hair, doesn't even get cut. It wasn't a razor, it was a pin. So it's cool. Nazarite vow still intact. And he just, what I don't understand is why Samson is staying with her for all this time. I mean, his pride is making him believe that he can overcome this. That he no longer needs the strength of God to get through this trial because he has his own super strength. And he's lost sight of the fact that, yes, the vow is what ties him to God and God is what gives him strength, but he's lost sight of what that is. And pride is making him stay in a place that he shouldn't be in. He finally admits to her the final secret. If I cut my hair off with a razor, I will lose my strength. So she goes, she cuts off his hair in the middle of the night, Philistines are upon you. He jumps out of bed and he goes to fight them, and he doesn't realize that his hair is being cut, apparently, and goes out to fight them and is captured. And this gets a little brutal, so hide your children, cover your ears, if you don't like gory stuff, but his eyes are gouged out, and he's bound in bronze shackles, and he's brought back to Gaza. He's brought back to the city that he once disgraced, but months beforehand. So now he's coming back to the place of his own victory as a prisoner. And the people, the Philistines, start to have a party. They're making sacrifices to their god, Dagon, for delivering Samson to them. And Samson is being paraded around. He's on a mill. He has to push this giant stone wheel like an ox. He's an animal. He's just a party favorite to them now. Everyone is coming and watching Samson. The great enemy of the Philistines is now just a work boy, a slave to them. But in Judges 16, verse 22, it says, the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. God wasn't finished with Samson. God was not finished with the fight. And he knew that Samson was his instrument. Despite being so broken, despite disobeying him, Samson was the instrument that he had provided for Israel to get out of enslavement. And the good news is that God wasn't finished with you either. No matter where you are today, whether you are addicted to pornography, whether you are flunking your classes and you're in a bad place with relationships, I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't living a life that was pleasing to God. I was walking away from Him. In fact, I did things in His name. I tried to convince Christians out of their faith. And I would go to these churches. I actually had a very surreal experience last fall where I was invited to go back to a church for a church conference where I had once gone to mock Christians. And it was the place of my victory that I had to go back to, that now I had to stand, and I felt a bit shameful, to be honest. Because in my heart, I thought, the last time I was here, I was insulting and mocking the God that I know. And I was trying to talk people out of their faith. But God wasn't finished with me there. God wasn't ready to give up on me. God was just using that opportunity to speak into my heart and to show me that it doesn't matter where you've been, it doesn't matter what you've done in your past, because God isn't finished with you. And God is ready to lift you up, because you are a child of the one true King, and He is not ready to let you fall into depravity. So what does He do with Samson, this other child of God who has strayed so far, and was supposed to be His chosen one? He's now blind, his eyes have been gouged out, he's shackled, but his hair began to grow again. And Samson asks his captain, can you lean me up against the pillar so I can feel it, and I can stable myself? And they lean him up against the pillars, and he says, if I am supposed to die, then let the Philistines die with me. And he brings down the pillars and crashes the temple and kills over 3,000 leaders of the Philistine Empire. That is more damage than he did when he was being prideful and arrogant. Despite fighting the enemies of God, when he was arrogant and prideful and making an impact there, most constructive thing he did for the kingdom of God was in his final act of obedience to the Lord. That his strength came back to him one last time, and he didn't use it to get pride, he didn't use it to get vanity, he didn't use it to cover his mistakes, but he did it in the most selfless way that he could. Is that he knew that his life was coming to an end, and that he'd used up all of his good luck. He was captured, there was no way he was coming out of this one. There was no slipping off and stealing the town gate this time. But he wasn't quite finished yet. He brings down the temple, and he kills 3,000 leaders. God provided the Israelites with a provision to escape the Philistines, and that provision is Samson. But you see, God provided us with a provision to escape our sins and to escape our shame. And that provision is Jesus. We don't have super strength. We don't have an enemy like the Philistines that were being called to kill all the leaders or anything like that. But I think in a way we are still enslaved. And in a way we are still captured. in our own folly, in our desire to fulfill our needs with something in this world. Because every time that we try to satisfy ourselves with material goods or a better car or a cool apartment or the latest video game or whatever, it doesn't satisfy us. Because nothing can fill the Jesus-shaped hole in our heart except for Jesus. We were dead in our sin, and there was no way we were ever going to encounter God. And God is so good that He hadn't forgotten us. Despite our disobedience, God sent down His one and only Son to die on the cross for us. Because He cared about us so much, He didn't want us to live. He didn't want us to live a life of slaves, a life of depravity. God wanted us to live a life of abundance. God wanted us to live a life so full of purpose. And He sent down His one and only Son for us. And you don't even have to take it. That's the crazy thing, is that He sent it to us knowing that people would say no. He's so good that He gives you what you want. And if that's God, you get it. If that's not God, you get it. So we can choose to deny it. We can choose to live for ourselves. But I think we'll all come to a place where we realize that our strength isn't enough. That no matter how hard we try, we're not going to get there on our own. So I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus anytime. Because His love never runs out. His strength never runs out. In spite of my transgressions, and every time I take a step back, He's there to catch me every single time. And that power is available to us today. So as we go into the season of our lives where it's midterm after midterm and papers and tests and everything, jobs and everything, it can get overwhelming. But know that your strength comes from a place most high. It comes from a place of everlasting strength that never runs out. And that power is available to all of us. All you have to do is accept it. You don't have to do anything. Dear Heavenly Father, I just lift up all the sons asleep, God, all of the people in this room, God, that we would learn not to live for ourselves, but to live for you. Learn that our strength comes from a place that is everlasting, and it comes from you, Lord. I just pray in this time, God, that we would take a moment to reflect and slow down. Thank you for all the past victories, God. All the times that you've delivered us from our sins, delivered us from our transgressions, God. All the times that we needed a helping hand. Maybe we didn't see it, but there. You carried us through. Thank you, God, for everything you've done. Thank you for what your Son has done on the cross in spite of us, God. I just pray as we go about the semester and this week and as we finish our school, God, that we would walk close to you, be close to your heart, remember what you've done for us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Take a moment to remember who God is and who I am. Let you go lifting my Lord again. Take a moment to remember who God is and who I am. Let you go lifting my Lord again. Let you go lifting my Lord again. Take a moment to remember who God is and who I am. the yoke of this world. Come upon to the yoke of Jesus. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. No longer am I held by the yoke of this world. Come upon to the yoke of Jesus. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. You lift my load. You lift my load. You lift my load. Lifting my load, lifting my load, lifting my load, lifting my load, lifting my load. No longer am I held by the yoke of this world. Come on to the yoke of Jesus. His yoke is easy. Burden is so light. No longer am I held by the yoke of this world. Come upon to the yoke of Jesus. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. His yoke is easy, his burden is so light. Your love carries me through all the valleys, all the darkest places. Your love carries me through all the valleys and the darkest places. Your love carries me through all the valleys and the darkest places.